Currently, I can confirm we are quorate. Currently, the chairman's not present. I believe he's en route. So would members like to appoint a chairman for this meeting until he gets here, or would you like to defer for 5-10 minutes?
Do we know when he's going to be here?
He was expected to be here.
Do you know? Just what you know. Well, I would propose then, Ronnie, that you take the chair. Would that do? Yes, until he comes. Does that make sense? Yeah. Get on with it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ogilvie.
Good morning, members. Welcome to the Welfare Reform Subcommittee. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. Item 1 is a Sederunt apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 5 members present, 2 currently not present, being the Chairman, Colin Smith, and Gail McGregor.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Has members got any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the 18th of August 2016. Can we agree that these are a true record? Okay, thank you. Takes us swiftly on to item 4, which is the Scottish Welfare Fund Discretionary Housing Payment Update, report by the Head of Customer Services. Is that you, Lorna? Yeah. You want to speak to it, or is there what you want to add?
No, nothing further to add to the report. But happy, Paul and myself, happy to take questions on it.
Okay, members, any questions on this report? Any issues you'd like to raise? Willie?
Hi, Chair. There's not so much questions, it's just the discretionary housing benefit and the effect of that in terms of what we've agreed as policy. And this is not a criticism of the 2 officials, neither Lorna nor Paula. I think, I read in this week's local paper, and Colin's actually quoting in it, that we've got 1 in 4 children living in poverty in Dumfries and Galloway. And I would imagine that the huge number of those 1 in 4 will have, the parents will have received a discretionary housing payment of some type. And the policy that we've got would mean that may be exhausted at some time in them being able to be awarded. And as I say, Colin's in speaking as an MSP. So yes, and yesterday at the area committee, we had the police report, and part of that police report referred to neglect, oblique cruelty to children. And when asked the question, the chief inspector did refer to it that the families in question undoubtedly would have been living in abject poverty. And I just wonder, Chair, and I look at the minute when you were in the chair at the last meeting, and we were going to write to the Scottish Government about this very issue in terms of poverty, children living in abject poverty, getting it right for every child, and we only need to take the statistics in terms of the number of children that are also involved in families receiving food parcels. And basically what I'm coming to, Chair, is that we have insufficient money in the discretionary housing payment to try and tackle this abject poverty. And I think that we should be, because we can look at our policies, we can look at the money that's available, but I'm quite sure if I asked the two ladies, there's never going to be enough money to meet the requirement and to tackle the problem of poverty. And I just wonder if we've reached the stage I don't know, what the response was to the written letter, but whether we should be making representation to the Scottish Government, putting our case and saying that we have children, 1 in 4. Colin, I just referred to your article last night in the paper. 1 in 4, Dumfries and Galloway, last night's Free Press. 1 in 4 children in Dumfries and Galloway. It's 1 in 3 across the board in the whole of Scotland. The statistic has come out, but we've got families and children living in this abject poverty. Whether we should be making a case to go to the Scottish Government and say there is insufficient money in the discretionary housing payment, or to increase benefits of some sort, whatever the case may be, if we can get the statistical detail to back up what we're saying and then go to the Scottish Government.
Thanks, Chair. I think, as Willie probably said, the officer's response is obviously we can only deal with the discretionary housing payment budget that we've been given. I think as a wider aspect, looking at children in poverty, obviously the council has appointed an anti-poverty officer, and I would imagine that's going to be well within the remit of what that officer is going to be, or one of the many things that officer will be looking at, and how we deal with that, not just in the benefits angle, but wider. How can we as a council pull in our resources across departments to actually mitigate some of those circumstances? But obviously, if members choose to make representation to the Scottish Government further about funding, because ultimately some of this does come down to funding of how we can support, but it's also about how can we mobilise our existing resources to actually provide the support as far as we can within the remit that we've got.
Just before going, I'll defer to Colin now. He's here. So you want to come up here?
Thanks very much, Ronnie. Thanks for sitting in the chair. Hopefully you found it very comfortable. Apologies to members for being slightly late. I attended another meeting this morning. Do you want to come back in on that point? Well, can I just say, first of all, probably remiss of me, I will circulate the response to the letter from the Minister to members. You won't be surprised to know there wasn't a check in the letter, but there was an outline of what support had actually come in to the council, and I'll circulate that to all members, so you've got a copy of that. I think the issue of the challenge that the council has around the administration of the welfare fund, and the fact that the amount of money we receive for that compared to how much it actually costs us to keep on top of it, was raised with the Minister when she was visited Dumfries recently, Jean Freeman. That issue was raised, and I think there's obviously an issue there, a specific issue there. There are two separate issues, if you like. There's the overall budget for discretionary housing payments, but obviously there's also the administration costs for us to actually run the service at the level that we want in terms of hitting those targets when it comes to dealing with applications. And the fact that it costs us more than we actually get for administration was certainly raised with the Minister. Maybe that's an issue that we should follow up on, certainly, but I'll make a point of circulating to all members a copy of the reply that came from the Minister.
I don't know if you heard, I think you will have heard most of what I was saying, Colin, and in support of your document or article that was in last night's paper, it was as you, in your capacity as an MSP, and that was the 1 in 4 children that are living in poverty in Dumfries and Galloway, and I only referred to a police report yesterday. And I don't think it's about punitive measures, it's about how do we deal with cases and accepting that there is not enough money in the pot, and you've brought another dimension to it in terms of how much it costs to administer, which may exceed the actual money that we've got available. I don't think there is enough, and people can be assisted and are assisted with a discretionary housing payment, but that isn't infinite. That does not go on and on and on. There's a cut-off point, which then puts people having either to try and live with what they've got. So in that respect, to the letter and the response you've received, I think that we should be making representation. That's the point I'm making, Colin, in support of what you've already written. 1 in 3 children living in, 1 in 4 children in Dumfries and Galloway is totally unacceptable.
No problem at all with that. Obviously, the Scottish Government will outline their budget in December, so you know, if members are happy, we can follow up the previous letters with an emphasis on how important this is to tackling poverty in Dumfries and Galloway, and that should also be taken into account when the government outlines its draft budget in December. If members are happy for us to do that. I've got Roberta next, and then Jane, and then Stephen.
Thank you. The officer made a very good point just a few minutes ago about widening the role that they've got. And I think possibly that is the way to go if there's a poverty group that is much larger than just contained to the council. There are lots of organisations that do have a little funding, I'm not saying a lot, and SAFA, for instance, and Red Cross, and even Alzheimer's Scotland, and there are people who are involved in all sorts of things, particularly for children, the family groups, the family centres we've set up, and working together, you might be able to resolve some of the very hard cases that are out there. But I always say this because it's what I believe. You know, lack of money is not always the cause of poverty. People make choices in life, and sometimes they make the wrong choices, spend their money on the wrong things, where one family might manage, another family won't. But that's where family centres have a very large role to play.
Jane, and then Stephen.
Can I just ask about 3.7, about the level of applications for DHP continues to reduce month on month? Could you just remind me why that is in the context of increasing demands elsewhere?
Hi. We have to remember that discretionary housing payments are only there to help people who have a shortfall in their housing costs. So it's not all people who've got children in their house, because they could currently be receiving maximum housing benefit. When the policy started to reduce and we applied the new policy, then obviously it reduced the repeat applications from customers who weren't going to get anything. You know, we'd already established our key indicators, how we were going to calculate if someone was deemed to be in financial hardship and ongoing. So the number of applications has been reducing because we have been receiving less applications from customers at a chance. They've had their funding, it's reduced to nil, they're finished, so they don't come back again. We're about to have an increase in applications, a significant increase in applications due to the new benefit cap. And we expect that these customers who are newly impacted by the benefit cap, or the 11 customers who are significantly more impacted by the benefit cap than they were in the past, will receive the full award that they can receive, certainly for 6, 12, 18 weeks. And we will receive future applications from these customers as their award then starts to taper away under the current policy. So that will be a significant influx, probably in the next few weeks. We're hopeful if we can get them in the next few weeks, then we'll be able to establish that position before they get into a rent arrears situation, especially given the festive period that's coming up and obviously is key to the minds of these customers. I can speak more about benefit cap later on, so I'll just leave that there.
Well, okay, if we're going to talk about benefit cap later on, I'll leave that question.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it'd be helpful to see the response you got, and hopefully that'll be shared amongst subcommittee members. I think it might make us look a bit cannier if we actually target our lobbying or our letter writing to all the sources that can actually help address both the causes of poverty as well as the mitigation against the effects of it. So I'm just conscious that the SSSC or the DHP is there to address that shortfall in the cost of housing, if you like, but that's not actually set by the Scottish Government. So I'm thinking maybe we should, the benefit caps, etc., these are things that are, if you like, set out with the scope and control of the Scottish Government. So I think we should maybe lobby the UK Government to sort of review how it does that so that we don't have to spend as much time trying to mitigate against the effects of it. So I think obviously we go to the Scottish Government to get support with one thing, and that helps mitigate because that's a priority for us and I understand that and it's the right thing to do. But equally, it would be remiss of us, I think, not to actually equally write a letter to the UK government and maybe see what powers they could maybe transfer or support they could give, or even amelioration of the benefit caps, which are so unpopular. So I think maybe we should take a sort of two-pronged approach, if you like, just to make sure we cover all the bases, because there's no point doing the mitigation without addressing the causes.
I personally don't have a problem with that if members are content. Willie?
Let's maybe contribute to you, Steve. I hear what Stephen's saying. I have no difficulty with writing to the UK government, back to SOARS, in terms of welfare benefits or welfare reform and everything else. But it's sort of got a sense of deja vu from what Stephen's saying, and I remember the same arguments being put as we lobbied the Scottish Parliament on the bedroom tax, and how that it had nothing to do with them. It was all Westminster and all the rest. Yet we managed to turn that round in Scotland, thankfully. And the Scottish government found, I think it was some £50 million. What I'm saying here is that you know, and thankfully they did, as I say. If they could find that, then what I'm saying, that we should be able to lobby the Scottish government, perhaps stronger than just a letter, and say to them that this is children, this is bringing two factions in here, getting it right for every child, knowing that there are children out there living in poverty. I do take the point that Roberta's talking about, but when we look at the caps on the next agenda, that may be where we look at this in the round, in terms of what other agencies are available, or voluntary organisations, or financial institutions. But this is about, you know, children living in poverty, and it's reflected in the food banks. We're now getting, I think it's Lowerburn in Stranraer, at least maybe through it, that's put funding into children's clubs in the morning, so that we know they're being properly fed and nourished, or at least getting some food. And I think we've got to be making the case to the Scottish Government and the UK Government.
Roberta?
Thank you, Chair. While I agree with everything that Willie is saying, Councillor Scobie, sorry, with respect, I certainly think that we have I know that we have a Child Protection Committee, and that's, you know, people on that are police and social workers, etc. So do you have any liaison with them at all? Is there any referrals on child protection, or is it strictly the funding that you're involved with? You haven't widened out to that extent?
When we're talking about discretionary housing payments and Scottish Welfare Fund, the work we do is with multi-departmental. So we talk to social work, we talk to homeless, we talk to all the departments that have contact with families and, you know, children. So it's as inclusive as we can be across council and across external partners organisations. Obviously, we work closely with RSLs and other support agencies as well to make them aware that the funds are there, and how to apply into them and make best use of them. And I think, as I referenced earlier, when we talk about the anti-poverty officer, and I think that's going to be a key role, is pulling all those partners and the support that can be provided across organisations, whether it's through accessing funds that are available or providing support through the agencies, that either the council funds or through the third sector, to provide that other support. It's non-financial as well.
Thank you.
Okay, quite a few issues there that I think will come up in the next report, actually, in terms of the update. So can we turn to the recommendations on item number 4? Members happy to note 2.1 and 2.2, to agree to 2.3, and I will discuss with officers the exact content of any further letters, but I'll make a point of circulating the response from the Minister, that we'll follow that up, highlighting again the issues around the level of applications we're receiving, the challenges that we have over the administration, and the fact that the funding doesn't fully meet the cost of administration. I'll follow that up and take on board, if members are happy, the point that Stephen made, to make representations regarding some of the causes of the benefit changes that are obviously impacting those applications. Members happy with that? Okay.
Chair, could you look at the possible or the lobbying factor that we do? And as I say, I think you're referring to here. This is much needed money that could be spent on helping lift children out of poverty. It's just a quote from here. So, you know, that we need the extra money on the DHP, so be it that it's discretion. But, you know, I think, you know, a strong worded letter is fine, but sometimes it's better face-to-face with ministers or whatever and making a case. If you could look at that in terms of our ability to lobby.
The Minister was in Dumfries recently, and those very points were raised with the Minister. I'm sure in other places we'll make a point of raising them as well. Okay, members, if we can turn now to item number 5, which is our regular updates. Obviously a lot of ifs and buts and maybes and potential timescales in there as well, but I think a number of significant changes about to come forward, particularly around housing benefit, I have to say, which are of deep concern. Can I ask if Lorna or Paul has anything they want to add to the report before members?
Nothing to add to the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, can I open up to any members' questions? Ronnie.
It's just the cumulative effect of all the changes that's coming. We've got universal credit, which is now being, even by the former minister himself, saying it's going to disadvantage people and maybe it's not as fair as he thought it would be. We've got the cap that came into force this week, and we mentioned that already. But when you look at the statistics that come out recently, it's just a tidal wave of things that's going to hit. You, Chair, and myself were criticised in the local press for saying that we are supporting the most vulnerable, and folks don't think we are, but we don't have the money to do everything that we want to do. So clearly, the root of all this is funding. Now, it's been mentioned in the previous report, there's two tranches. There's the Scottish Government's responsibility, and there's the UK through the DWP and the benefits. Some of that's not devolved, so I can understand why we should challenge the UK government on this. So it's just reading through this and reading stuff that outside of here, and this new officer's going to have his work cut out. It's just, we need to start fighting back, if that's the right word, and highlighting that we can't deliver because of the lack of funding. It's a root cause analysis, funding, wherever it comes from. So I'll just reflect on what everybody's said so far. I think we should be writing to all who have got an influence on this to try and highlight the fact that this is a rural economy, low-wage economy, the problems that come with rurality, and I think we've got to highlight that. So it's more a statement than a question, but I think we really need to focus on this.
Valid point. Jane, and then Willie.
A couple of things. I just want to get absolutely clear in my mind. I thought, and I am here to be corrected, that this benefit cap would not come into play if somebody was in work, 16 hours of work. So I thought that it simply didn't come into play if somebody took a minimum of 16 hours of work. And when that happens, you then go on to credits, tax credits, I understand. So is that the case? I mean, are we basically saying that that this only occurs if people do not take 16 hours worth of payment? And the next question would be, you know, what are the mitigating issues, and do we actually pick up people who cannot do that? Is that another benefit? I think I know the answer to that. And my final question would be, I think we'd be interested, because everything is now going down into ward level, Chairman. I think we would like to see who is affected by ward. I think that would be helpful to know. Numbers.
Affected specifically on the benefit cap?
On the benefit cap, very specific by ward, yes. Okay. I think we should know that.
Be able to do that without identifying anyone, I don't suppose we numbers generally. Yeah.
The benefit cap doesn't apply if a customer would receive working tax credit. It's working either 16 hours or 24 hours, because they raised the number of hours of work for couples to 24 hours. I think a single parent is still 16. You're also not subject to the benefit cap, which is the overall cap in the amount of welfare benefit you receive, if you are a carer and in receiving carer's allowance, or you or a member of your household, and that is yourself, your partner or your dependents, is in receipt of disability living allowance. So it is only affecting about 130 households within Dumfries and Galloway who, unfortunately, on the basis of what we're looking at just now, have a large number of children with no disabilities and no work. The point about how we're going to mitigate the effects is we're inviting application for a discretionary housing payment for all customers at the benefit cap. We have, in the past few months, completed some work where we wrote to everybody who the DWP had indicated may have been affected by the benefit cap. We invited them to tell us about their household circumstances, to tell us about all their income, in an effort to identify customers where the DWP or our records were incorrect. Also to identify if there were any underlying issues which could mean carer's allowance needs to be claimed or disability living allowance needs to be claimed. Wider than that is about having a discussion with the customer to say that the benefit cap is likely to come. Could this apply to you? No. Could that apply to you? No. Could that apply to you? No. Okay, let's see if there's anything we can do to get you into 16 or 24-hour work. And if there was nothing, we applied all the support, then at that point we would take an application for that customer for their future need for discretionary housing payments to prevent them having to receive the notice saying your housing benefit's being cut and then acting. We have had limited response rate, unfortunately, from customers. Even though we have been out, we have phoned, we have lettered. Some customers, as we expect, done. As soon as it came in the door, back to us, dealt with, no problem. Then it's about, we've been working with multi-agencies to try and capture that and deal with that level of support to the others. Just now, the 7th of November was Monday, 10 of our current capped customers will have received a letter, probably today, advising them the new level of the cap. Because they were capped before, the new level of the cap has effectively taken their housing benefit award down to 50 pence a week. So we'd spoke to them before, and that's them now had their housing benefit claims been updated, and they have received their notice of the impact of the new level of the cap. We have one customer who was in receipt of the benefit who was capped. Admittedly, it was 72 pence a week. Because she is in receipt of carer's allowance on the 7th of November, she is no longer capped. The rest of the customers, the DWP have indicated that we will receive these notices in order to apply the cap within this week or the next. And we're just sitting every day thinking, do we have them yet? Can we deal with them now? And as soon as we have them, we'll deal with them as quickly as we can, and we're ready to prioritise any DHP applications from these customers if we haven't already received them.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's incredibly helpful. I think it's also helpful to know and reassuring to know that, in a way, you're talking about individual families and individual customers. You're able to do that at this stage. It sounds to me, and I don't know whether you would agree or not, but I think it sounds to me as if we are being absolutely proactive, which I think is essential. To get to a stage where you're simply capping somebody and nothing has happened, I think would be deplorable. But I think it sounds to me as if there is as much support as you can possibly achieve at this stage. I think it's still incumbent upon this committee to receive information per ward. I don't mean to identify that's not the issue at all, but I do think it's important that we know what's happening where. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We do that. Was it yourself, Willie?
The information has been helpful from Paul in that he identifies 130 households that are going to be affected. And I think if I'm looking at this correctly, the monies that could be affected in Dumfries and Galloway as a region could be a reduction of £300,000. A potential subsidy reduction, which I'm looking at it for a different perspective in terms of the economy. For the 130 who could be benefit capped, and it's the loss of income, if you like, in the economy of Dumfries and Galloway. To Dumfries and Galloway, is that the figure being quoted here? Yeah, but the 130. But I'm reading for this.
The report says anticipating around 130. Obviously, that varies, but anticipating 130 families at £55 per week. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a substantial.
And that's to the economy of Dumfries. That would be my first point. So then you start to look at the impact of that. And only this week, I think I said this yesterday, I questioned my the energy bill. In many cases, it's no matter of just me questioning my energy bill because I was able to pay that, but we've got people who are unable to pay, even if they were going to question. So we have the fuel poverty, and again, reading from a report, we've been given a $250,000 or the 9 million that has been made available for fuel poverty. Now, I would imagine many of these people who are capped or could fall into that category may fall into that region. So it's how we deal with that. But it comes back to the reality in terms of if they can work 16 or 24, if the jobs aren't there, and this is to try and drive people into saying, go and get a job for 16 hours and go and get a job if you're a couple for 24, then, how realistic is that within the context of Dumfries and Galloway and people being able to access, notwithstanding that some may not be able to, and carers are exempt. Thankfully, those that are on long-term illness and disability no longer need to running to be checked and further examined and then pushed that way. They are also exempt. They conceded that point. But again, it's the whole welfare reform that we need to be tackling, and the measures that we are putting in place are great, and we will have an anti-poverty officer, and knowing the person that I do, I'm sure she will do as hard a job as she can. But looking at this, looking at the impact welfare reform is going to have with the caps and everything, we're again looking at people being pushed into to abject poverty. And it's what do we do with this one? To again and make representation to the UK, and if there is further devolved powers to the Scottish Parliament, to say, look, this is the effect this is having in Scotland and in breaking it down region by region. So it's looking at, there's three, if figures are correct, Colin, 300k or a lost income to Dumfries and Galloway that people no longer will have in their pockets to go and spend in Dumfries and Galloway. That's no small bread. And again, the effect that's going to have on people. And it brings into what Roberta said earlier in terms of using some of these agencies that are available to try and mitigate the circumstance. But I think it's better to tackle it at source. I think, Ronnie, you used the word that we've got to fight against it.
So it's a valid point, and it is. You have to also look at the fact that not only is the loss through the benefit cap, but the changes around housing benefit are absolutely enormous. The potential loss of income to the council and others is incredibly significant. Do you want to come back in, Jane, or just?
Well, I was just saying, going to turn it on its head. I mean, the 300,000 is absolutely it's a fact, and I don't take away from that. But everything that we are told is about building confidence and helping people into work. And what we've heard from the officers here is that is joined up. It's not simply that Paula and her cohort say you're going to be capped. End of story. That's just not the case, and that's why I think we need another report back, Chairman, to explain to us exactly what is happening with respect to people here and the level of support that is offered. Because everybody knows that people are happier if they are in work. That's a given. I mean, it's an absolute given. And that the £300,000 will be mitigated if we manage to get people back into work. And the other thing I will also say is that I totally applaud the fact that this council has taken the view on the living wage. So, the sort of jobs that maybe people might be helped to get back towards, I would hope and could possibly be assisted in getting to, is supported by this council's view on the living wage.
But obviously, a significant amount of work still to be done on that in the private sector. Obviously, the council pay the living wage. Now, all social care or those caring for adults will receive the living wage from the 1st of October. But there's a substantial amount of work to be done in Dumfries and Galloway. This is the lowest paid region in Scotland. The latest ONS figures confirm that. And, of course, the job opportunities out there remain challenging as well. But in terms of a future report, can we just be very clear what we're asking for is obviously it can be contained within the future update on welfare reform, but you're looking for the wider level of support that might be available to mitigate some of these changes. Is that form a report the best way to do that, or presentation or something? Or I'll leave that to officers, but information.
Information to flow back.
How we're able to draw on wider support in order to mitigate against that, other than just obviously the payments of things like DHP. Okay, I've got Roberta, then Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to say that the impact of our living wage is already being seen. I was talking to a care provider, and people who have never thought of care, and I'm talking about meals as well, are being encouraged because of the shortage to come into work. So, I mean, that's an area that we could explore as well, because we are very dependent on carers. We have a very high proportion of elderly people. So, all credit to everybody that's doing this job as well. You seem to be covering almost everything.
When I met with a care provider recently, and actually several carers, and they said it obviously made a substantial difference, both to the business, because obviously as a council we are now funding around commissions of around £16 per hour, and that allows them to pay the living wage and support those businesses. It makes them more sustainable, but also makes it a more attractive place for people to come and work. At the end of the day, they are competing with supermarkets and everybody else around that wage level, yet the demand for care is enormous. I think if you look at the figures in 25 years' time, every working person is probably going to have to work in social care in Dumfries and Galloway just to meet the demographic challenges that we face. So the living wage has made a substantial difference, but it's only part. I think one of the feedback from the carers and the care providers, it's only part of the answer. We need to look at how we support training in that sector as well, and how we put in place a wider framework to support the care sector in the way that we support care in homes as well. But that's for another committee to discuss, I suspect. So we won't. I'm getting a roll from governance here for moving off the remit. So we'll come back to that and bring in Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and stay on topic. I think it might be useful to maybe get more detail on how well the monitoring is going with East Lothian, given I'm not sure if there's anything you can add to that at the moment. It's maybe not been going long enough to sort of get any sort of meaningful data on that, if you like, but that'd be helpful, because obviously that will give us a flavour of how we can better be proactive and what the expectations will be. Just on the temporary accommodation as well, I mean, I noticed there's the annual loss to the council is 333,322 per annum. Is there any other way we can organise how we provide that service to close that shortfall? I mean, I know this will be something that's been looked at, and there's maybe just certain things you can and can't do, but obviously that figure kind of is a bit similar to what we're going to be hit with in terms of the impact of the subsidy reduction. So I'm just wondering, are we exploring that option as well? Is that something we can look at, or have we exhausted the possibilities in that?
Thanks. Regarding the temporary accommodation, it's very much part of the Homeless Service Improvement Plan is to look at our current provision of temporary accommodation, and obviously the impact of the benefit cuts is accelerating that work. So what we're looking at the moment is the type of accommodation we've got, the costs of actually providing it, bearing in mind the cuts that we're going to take. Because obviously we provide accommodation, we charge a rent for that, and most of that is recouped through housing benefit, as most applicants tend to apply for housing benefit. But there is a cap on the subsidy we get back, and that's the bit that's being eroded. So we are reviewing that because we need to make it, because it's going to be a further loss to the council if we don't review that accommodation and go into negotiation with providers. Obviously, there's challenges around there, about, the providers and actually what we're commissioning at the moment and how we provide that. But I think it's all hinged with the review and actually looking at our needs within homeless and what we need in temporary accommodation going forward.
On that point, in terms of the work you're doing with that, given the sort of urgency of it, where will that get naturally reported back through? Because I'm not sure if it's directly to this one normally, but...
It'll normally go through Housing Sub, it's via the Homeless Improvement Plan, but there's also reports back to Communities Committee as well on the improvement plans that will be covered under there.
The East Lothian Universal Credit is now in full service within East Lothian. And I was speaking to someone the other day, and I'll not share their words because I'm being recorded. It is challenging, and they are doing everything they can to meet the challenges. Just to clear up a misconception, universal credit is more favourable to those in work. It is not more favourable to a significant portion of others, but it is significantly more favourable to those in work. We are currently in low-level service for universal credit, and we are awaiting our confirmed date for full service. What we see in the arena is they suggested some time ago that full service would be rolled out and it would do a few job centres a month and then it would ramp up. What we've seen is the ramping up has not happened, and we've slowed it back down again for full service. So we wait to see when it will be ramped up. But just now, East Lothian are taking full claims for full service universal credit. They are facing the same challenges that we currently face in relation to customers who fall through the net and who are in temporary accommodation, or where their housing cost and element in universal credit is insufficient to meet their charges. The issues with payments, direct to landlords, customers not spending the money on what it's intended to be spent on. And I would say the issues that are being felt in East Lothian are more in relation to volume than process. The same customers, wider.
Would it be possible maybe, I don't know if the timing of the next meeting of the subcommittee would allow for the information, a sort of maybe a number of presentations or reports, maybe just to update on what that looks like, the better, maybe a wee bit more detail, and then also what Councillor Maitland was asking for in terms of the numbers, if you like, in terms of those affected in our area. So I'm just, just to try and get to maybe compound the work of officers, so it's kind of like not bringing those reports together, if you like.
There's no problem adding that to the future welfare reform updates that we get. It's a regular item on the agenda. So, are you clear what Stephen's requesting in terms of that detail?
I'm quite happy to arrange a member seminar on universal credit, where we could go over the main factors of universal credit and some case study impacts on customers. It'd be easier in a member seminar environment than as a report to committee. We could cover the same customer type, look at benefit cap customers in a seminar environment if you felt that was more beneficial. I'm happy to bring it detail in a report, but there's limits to what we can include.
I think a seminar is a good idea, because it gives members an opportunity, and widening that out beyond the committee, make other members available, aware of the fact that we're doing that, because there are significant changes taking place, and even just the devolving the powers from Westminster to the Scottish Parliament as well, there's significant changes there, and they impact considerably on the council. But I get a take from a lot of members that they're not quite aware of what those changes actually are at the moment, and how does a decision in one place impact on somebody's benefit that's decided elsewhere. There's a lot of significant changes, so it might be worth just wrapping all that up in a seminar and actually making members aware of the points that have been raised, the changes around, I think, the housing benefit and accommodation side of things as well, and then just looking at the way the powers are actually changing as well and what that may mean in terms of future decisions. There is obviously a consultation at the moment on a future social security bill as well, which will have an impact as well. So there's a lot of things happening out there, and a seminar might be useful to bring members up to date on that. Stephen, then I'll bring Willie in.
Thank you. Thanks again. And I think just what you're mentioning there about the new system being more favourable to those in work, and just getting a clear understanding about, well, how much work do you have to be in for that to be more favourable in terms of like where there's worklessness, if you like, and just even understanding that, because sometimes these bare figures are easier to disseminate to people who are maybe looking to see what their best option is in terms of making their life choices about how much work to take on and how much benefit they might lose or not.
Okay, if we stick to 2 topics, is that all right, Chair? If we stick to universal credit overview, customer impacts, because you'll not want to sit and listen to me all day. And benefit cap, a rural study, and then the temporary accommodation you mentioned, separate.
I mean, given the fact that will report to Housing Subcommittee and Communities, then that might be the best thing to do. By the time you get through the first 2 items, you will be asking a lot of questions, I guarantee it. Willie?
Yeah, could I just ask, Paul has mentioned it, you've mentioned it, Stephen's mentioned it, it's the case study impact, and it's all very well for us to sit here. I think you referred to it eloquently, like in this region, job opportunities still remain a challenge. It takes me back to my days when I just left, or just before I left school, when somebody went to sign on the dole, they were given a green card and said, you got to go into the builder's yard because there's a job there, and if you don't go down and get the card signed and then at least you've gone for the interview, then you're going to, benefits are going to be stopped, your unemployment benefits are going to be stopped. Well, we've got 130 affected by the welfare reform, the universal credits. It's saying to people in areas, you've got to go and get a job, but there's no job to go and get, either in 16 or 24. So it's that case study that would be good, not by name, but of the 130. Are there really jobs out there for them to go and get? So it's punitive rather than to encourage a person to go and get a job when there are none. Or there could be limited jobs and so forth. It's looking at that as a case study as well. How realistic is it in terms of, going out there and getting a job where the approaches are punitive? I think in the seminar I would hope we can include that.
It certainly be raised. Whether we have any answers is another question. Okay, members, will we go to the recommendations? Thanks for your questions. The members happy to note 2.1 and 2.2, and the fact we'll have a seminar open to all members on the 2 topics. We won't overburden you too much. Okay, thank you very much, members. I don't have any further business. Thank you for your attendance.